Hello fiction fans, T.H. Leatherman here. Today we're going to go over how to write good dialogue. So what separates a good book from a great book? Great dialogue. How your characters interact with each other is the difference between good writing and absolutely great writing that will rivet your readers. So where do you start? Where do you get the ideas for this dialogue? A lot of it comes naturally. What are your characters going to do? How are they going to get there? Where do authors get these ideas? Everywhere. Coffee shops, shopping malls, grocery stores, wherever you're going to be, listen to what's going on around you. You'll come up with some great ideas. You'll get snippets of conversation, and those will lead you to think, what are they talking about? How did they get there? How can I twist it into something mischievous or devious? So let's start with what is actually going to make your character stand out, and that is their voice. That unique voice of that particular character that gives them that personality that pops off the page to your readers. One of the first things you're going to have to think about in regards to that is, what is their social status? Do they come from a lower class background, a middle class background, an upper class background? This is going to be carried over in that particular person's speech. Also, what is their personality? Are they a caregiver type person? Are they more action oriented, always trying to do things? Are they trying to take care of other people, or are they out for themselves? Are they one of these people that needs to achieve every goal, or are they more comfortable and more laid back, thinking whatever happens, happens? Another thing that's going to contribute to your character's voice is slang. What words do they use more often? Now, keep in mind when you're thinking of slang that some of this slang may be circumstantial to the story. If you're on an alien planet or in a particular society or world, there may be slang that's specific to that particular world or society. However, your particular character should have slang that is specific to them. Make sure that you have some things that are mannerisms and words that that particular character is going to use more often. That way that character gets a unique voice, different from the other characters in your book. Also remember that the tone of the language is going to change depending on who your character is talking to. If it's someone that they have a great deal of respect for, then they're probably going to be more formal. If it's someone that they're friends with, then it's probably going to be more friendly. However, if it's someone that they have a romantic interest in, that's going to change the language again. You can expect a lot of use of pet names for each other in those sorts of circumstances, and more touching maybe. The next part of dialogue that you are going to get into is exposition. As you know, Bob, this is what happens here. Now, you can't avoid exposition, but there are times when you should maybe rewrite it. If you have 3 paragraphs of background, consider if this should be a conversation between 2 characters in the story. One of the things writers sometimes do is they include an ignorant character, a character that is not part of that society or that particular culture, so they can have a more experienced character explain what's going on to the more ignorant character. Another thing that's good for getting those facts that everyone knows out there is confrontations. If you have 2 characters that know a fact, then introduce a bit of conflict between them so that they are reminding each other of, hey, I did this, or hey, we can't do this because this is the situation and you know it. Confrontation is a great way to get things that everyone knows into the story. Another thing you can do is to summarize boring dialogue. Now, when you meet someone in public, you often say a few things and pleasantries and so forth. But in writing, that's boring. Saying something like, they exchanged pleasantries, is an acceptable substitute. Another thing that you should use in your dialogue is dialogue tags that involve actions. Body language. what are the characters doing? How are they reacting to things that are being said? So, if you're talking in a kitchen, perhaps someone in the kitchen is putting away silverware, or perhaps they're reaching for a glass. These are actions that they can take that indicate who is talking without interfering with the dialogue itself. They are busy doing something and engaging in conversation, just like normal people do. However, something that you should avoid is using the same body language over and over again. You might go through your chapter and see how many nods and shrugs that there are. How many times do the characters reference the eyes? If you've got more than one or two of these in a chapter, you should probably get rid of them. Find other ways to say the same thing in the same way. Another thing when you're going through and making sure that your dialogue is snappy and original is to avoid things that are passive language. If one of your characters is saying, "I heard this," "I saw this," you can take that out. Just explain what the noise was. Having more active language and less passive language improves your writing. A note about dialogue tags. Punctuation goes inside the quotation marks. If you have a he said or some sort of action that's open-ended, you end the sentence with a comma and then open the quotation marks. If the tag is at the end of the sentence, you also end with a comma. However, if it's a question or an exclamation, you can put the question mark inside the quotation marks, and you can also put the exclamation point inside the quotation marks, but the next letter in the sentence is lowercase. It does not mean the end of the sentence. The tag at the end of the sentence is included in the whole dialogue. Another thing I would suggest is that you avoid semicolons. Semicolons are great for essays, but in creative writing, we tend to avoid them. Ellipses and em dashes are excellent, though. If you have a person who stops in the middle of a sentence as something occurs to them, ellipses are fantastic. And I sometimes have 2 or 3 of them in a chapter. An em dash would be if someone is actually cut off. It's an extended dash. If there is an action and it's a complete sentence, then you put a period at the end of that and then open the quotation marks for the dialogue that's taking place. If it's a sentence fragment that includes an action, then that's when you put a comma at the end and then open the quotation marks for the dialogue that's taking place. Tag, 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 tag. Don't tag everything. If you have 2 people in a room and they're having a conversation, you only need to remind the person who's reading who's talking maybe once every 2 or 3 paragraphs. On the contrary, if you have 3 or more people involved in the conversation, you should be tagging everything so that people can keep track of who's speaking what. Another thing you can avoid doing is using the character's name in the dialogue over and over again. When friends meet on the street, they already know who each other are. Therefore, they're not going to use each other's name in the conversation. They'll just say, "Hey, what's up, guy?" and then have the conversation go on from there. You can include it in the tags, don't include it in the conversation. Said, asked, exclaimed. A lot of new authors tend to try to leave these out of a conversation, going for more active tags. This is a mistake. Don't be afraid to use them. Using said a few times in a chapter is completely fine. It is so ingrained in the way that we read that our minds just skip over it. However, if everything that you say is a said, then you might want to cut back on it. Use some other tags as well. A note about accents. Now, accents are part of creating a character voice for your character. However, one of the tendencies is for new writers to try to misspell things so that the accent comes across in the reading. The problem with this is that it causes the reader to hiccup as they're trying to sound out the word that you're trying to say. It's okay to do maybe once or twice, maybe a word that the character mispronounces or says differently than the other characters, but don't make every other word be some sort of odd spelling. It'll kick your reader out of the action, and it will take them out of the story. And as a writer, you want your characters to come to life in your readers' minds. And if they're being pulled out by odd spelling, that's something that you want to avoid. Ha ha, hero guy! You will sit there as I outline my whole plan, and you get to bask in the glory that is me, villain guy. Now, occasionally characters in your story are going to monologue. When this happens, they may speak for 2 or 3 paragraphs. Now, this is okay, but follow the kind of rules that you have when you're writing essays and other types of writing, where every time that you're changing subjects, you open a new paragraph. Now, with the quotation marks in this case, when you end the paragraph, take out the quotation mark if that particular character is continuing to speak in the next paragraph. That's how you clue the reader in that the same person is still speaking. In the last paragraph in that character's monologue, that's where you put the quotation marks at the end. This clues the reader in that this particular character has stopped speaking and someone else is going to start speaking on the next line. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. I post weekly. If you enjoyed this episode, like or comment below. If you have a question or a topic you want me to cover, message me on Facebook. So long, fiction fans!